One of the most profound things I've learned in my life is that it's actually not about my hair at all. I've spent a lifetime trying to cover up who I am. And as much as I love a good external transformation, and I do, I much more love a heart transformation. Join me as I share how I work to heal my heart, find happiness, and embrace our hair. Hey guys, welcome back to It's Not About Your Hair, where we talk all things hair, heart, and happiness. Hey, I hope that the last two episodes were okay for you quality wise because I really loved the candidness of not having the microphone and feeling like we're just having a conversation, like we're just sitting together in whatever space we're in talking about life. And so I'm trying it again because it just feels right. So if you're tuning in via Spotify or Apple and you're not watching on the YouTube channel, I'm just sitting in my living room. The last 2 weeks I filmed while I was away traveling for work, and it just felt a little bit more easy for me. And I'm not sure if the guys that helped me produce the podcast like this as much because I know that the things with the microphone are there. So definitely leave me a comment, you guys, if you feel like the audio quality isn't as good, because of course I want to make this as good for you as possible since you're the ones listening. But I also just wanted to feel like we're just doing a thing together and just hanging out. And that's what we're doing. So today, we're moving into summer, you guys, a week away from summer break for my kids. By the time this episode comes out, it will probably be the last week of school for your kids. If you're in the same area as me, if you're far away, maybe your kids just got out. But I wanted to share something that our family has done for years. I think since we homeschooled our kids, and it's been a long time since I homeschooled my kids, and some years were better at it than others, but I will tell you, I got so sick of feeling like I was nagging my kids all summer long. Not only nagging, but having an unrealistic expectation that my kids were going to be superhero kids who cleaned the house and did all the chores and didn't lay in their beds all day. And that I would come home from work and not be the ornery, grumpy, complaining mom with expectations that hadn't been set for my kids. And not only that, it's hard to feel like as your kids are transitioning. So we did this one with our kids when they were young, but now that I really only have one left who's living at home, but as they transition to older people, and I always struggled with that because my kids are all 5 years apart. So my oldest, was 15. That put my middle was 10, and my youngest was 5. That's a pretty big age difference. And the expectation of each of those seasons brought a different type of situation. And they compared themselves to each other and they fought. And what was going to be realistic for a 5-year-old was going to be totally different than what's realistic for a 15-year-old. Anyways, I'm really big on communication. I think it's super important. I think that everybody's voice matters. I haven't always done this well because sometimes as a mom, you feel like your voice is the most important. If you know, you know. But I think knowing the people in our house well and helping them to know themselves well is super helpful. So something that we do to help set a standard or at least set a mind shift for our family and stops me from feeling like I have to constantly figure out what my kids want to do and not nagging them all the time to get out of bed is we do a summer family kind of questionnaire, and then we go over it together. And we also do this at the beginning of the school year. And I got this idea from a client 100 years ago, which is why it's called It's Not About Your Hair, because I feel like I've learned so many of the things that I do in my personal life now have come out of conversations I've had behind my chair. I feel so lucky that I really live life with so many different types of people, and they share with me what works inside their family and what doesn't work. And I'm able to grab some of those things and implement them in my family. So years ago, I was talking to a client about feeling like my summer was spent nagging and my kids hating me and only wanted to spend time with their dad because I would get home from work and 2 of the 3 would still be in bed, and it's like 1 o'clock, or I would take the day off from work and work less, and they wouldn't get up, and I'd come home, and they'd be sitting in a pile of all the food they'd eaten all day but hadn't done anything, and so none of it was fun. And if you have been in this situation or have children at all, I'm sure you have, uh, and then you feel like you're overdoing for everybody while they're underdoing. So these goal sheets, encourage conversation with your family, because if you have teenagers, there's two types of teenagers, I believe, and maybe they live simultaneously as the same person. They either talk your ear off or they don't talk to you at all. And if you try to talk to them, you are in fact an idiot. And so conversations and caught off guard conversations. So teenagers are as hard to talk to as any type of person. Mine, particularly, that still lives in my home, wears her noise canceling headphones all of the time while she's listening to her music, which means that she is unavailable for a conversation. I know I could probably tell her she can't do that, but you know what? I'm picking my battles, but it is very annoying. So sometimes I have to text her to get her to get her to even know that we're talking to her, because I can yell and yell and yell, but she doesn't hear us. So, anyways, these questionnaires do a couple of things. They help me to know what my kids are their likes are, their dislikes. It helps me to understand what are some triggering things for my kids. It also helps me to know how to communicate with them better. Some of the questions are simple, like, what's, and I'll go through these questions with you guys and then tell you what I've learned about my kids a little bit. And then if you want more information, I'm going to try to figure out how to link it. But if not, you can comment on this that you would like a copy of this, and I'll send it to you. Very, very simple, and you can adapt it to yourself. So my client had a few. We've changed it over the years to adapt to our family. But let's go through it. So a couple of the things that are really important to me is I want to know inside my kids. So not just external goals, which some of those are on here and things like that, but I want to know what are some things, and I want the sisters to know. And when we had an exchange student, we did the same thing. So one of the questions is things that make me sad, things that make me sad. And we kind of do this as a family meeting. We have dinner and then we fill out these things. And I'm telling you right now, everybody acts irritated about it because you cannot be bothering teenagers, and little kids might like it. And you can make them simpler if you have littles. But I'm telling you, everybody knows these things, and even hard for my husband sometimes to fill out, but really, really important. So things that make you sad. That way I'm aware of some things that might be affecting my kids, or if I'm doing some of those things, my biggest pet peeve. So that's on there. That's super important, because the truth is, if we love each other, we don't want to do the one thing that makes our kids uh, upset, or siblings. If you know that that's your sibling's biggest pet peeve, now if you have meanie weenie kids, then they might use this against them, but we have found it to be very helpful in our house. So I'm giving an example. And the last one in the feelings and emotions area is what makes me smile. So that could be simple things like uh, goldfish in the cupboard, uh, a walk outside, time around the pool, time with friends, simple things. But then I know, so if I recognize that my kid is sad, instead of me trying to jump circles, which I've done before to try to figure out how to make them happy based on what makes me happy, I kind of have some general ideas of ways that I could tap into my kids really quick and help them to feel better, or or siblings. If you notice that one of your sisters or brothers is down and out, you can kind of implement some of these thought processes. So I'll give you an example. My biggest pet peeve. So my middle daughter, Soph, who's been on the podcast before, she's a 4 on the Enneagram. If you don't know your Enneagram, I've talked about this before. That's a great tool to understand yourself better and your kids, and has been really helpful to our family. But Sophie is a 4 on the Enneagram, and her personality style sometimes is not as hyped as mine. So she can tend to, what I would consider, look sad. And she's like, Mama, I'm not sad. And I would say to her all the time, why don't you just smile? Well, smile. Because I have an inherently broken piece of me that wants everyone to be happy. And that's just true. And It's good and it's bad. Your greatest asset overextended is your biggest weakness. So I think joy um, is good, but it also sometimes I have a hard time letting people be sad. But anyway, so Sylvie's biggest pet peeve is when I tell her to smile all the time. And I thought that was helping because I think if you just choose to smile, like, look at this, look at how different. If you're watching, just smiling lights you up, it opens you up. I mean, this is like so sad, and being sad makes you sad. But when I quit saying that to Sophie, and instead I looked for ways to speak to her in ways that speak her language, our relationship got so much better, and not feeling like I was constantly making her feel bad about herself was really important, that I took the time to get to know her. Okay. So, what makes me sad? What is my biggest pet peeve? And what makes me smile? Those are all really kind of super important to just know the emotional temperature of your family. And then this is a summer list. So I can do a different podcast if you guys really like this, different episode where we talk about our beginning of the year list, because that one's really fun and a little bit different, but it has the same kind of theme. So I'm going to go through the questions. I'll just do them fast or else I'll get sidetracked. And then I'll tell you some things I've learned about my family in the process. Okay. So, what would make my summer great is the topic at the top. Number one, something I'd like to learn this summer. And what's really cool about these, you guys, I forgot to mention this, is once you have these, so the Bible says, "A people without a vision will perish." I also think one of my favorite quotes of all time is, "A goal without a plan is just a wish." Most people just live their life hoping and expecting that things are going to go the way they want because they thought about them. But really, when we write things down, something in our brain starts to activate and we now have this goal. When you get your kids to think about what they want, it gets them a plan too. So sometimes too much time, like all summer off, just sitting around without knowing something that they want to do or something that they want to accomplish can be too much time, right? So having these things wrote down for them helps them to identify what they want. And then it also helps you to know when they're hitting those goals, and it helps them to be self, what is the word I'm looking for? Self-motivated, right? They're gonna be self-motivated because they now know what their goal is. And so, okay, something I'd like to learn this summer, and how will I learn that? So it could be as simple as I want to get better at volleyball. So we had that was one of our things one summer. I want to get better at volleyball. So we did two volleyball camps. So how will I learn it? I'll take a volleyball camp. I want to get better at tennis. One of our kids at school, something they wanted to learn. Uh, Usually it's around sports, but Sophie was crocheting one year. It can be anything. And then you can help them figure out how to do it. But how will I learn it? Helps them to start thinking like, okay, what are some practical ways that you could learn that new skill? Is it a new language? Is it a new talent? Is it to get better at a sport? What is it? And then how will they get there? And why do they want to learn that? So not only do I have to think about what is the thing that I want to learn, how will I learn it, but why do I want to learn it? That kind of locks these things deeper and makes it a bigger deal for us and for them. Two, something, two things I'd like to do this summer, which is really fun. So they can write down maybe they want to go to a water park, or maybe they want to hike a trail, or maybe they want to go to the beach or kayaking down the river. Like sometimes I think what would happen is I felt guilty that my kids were home so much. And I was always trying to make them happy, which made me more bitter, probably because I was trying to plan all this stuff and they didn't want to do it. So knowing what they want to do is really helpful because you know what? It is okay for them to just have some downtime. I would try to encourage, we were really big on limiting screen time in the summer, and you can run your family however you want to. But the screens for all of us, you guys, can be good or bad. They're not just bad and they're not just good. They can be good or bad. And overuse on any of it steals the inside stuff. So everything I talk about on this podcast for you and I is for our kids too. They're born with a purpose, and teaching them at a very young age that they have control over their lives in some way, that they can listen to things inside of them and then make them happen at a young age is going to help them to not be stuck in this cycle as adults. Okay. So, two things I'd like to do this summer. And then we can work really hard to make those 2 things happen. Now, if it's go to Italy and go to Japan, probably not gonna happen, buckaroo. So make these realistic for your family, but a day trip, kayaking down the river, super, super simple. Go golfing with dad. Like, what is the 2 things that you'd like to do this summer that are new to you? Something I'd like to read. This was really important in our family that everybody reads a lot. They had to read for at least an hour a day in order to get screen time. And that was just a rule in our family. It gets harder as they get older to enforce those things. But if you start them when they're little, then it is just a practice. Like my kids are avid readers now. I struggle with it, to be honest. I read and I go on sports where I'm reading a lot. But if I'm spending a lot of time on my phone, I do get distracted. But something I'd like to read. And then for fun, and then something I'd like to read to learn something. So self-help or a cookbook or anything, anything fun and learning, and try to set that goal for reading at least an hour a day. And they can break that up if they have a hard time reading into little segments, but that's really fun. And then make a list. And if they don't know, then they can look up summer reading list or for their age. In our town, we have first of all, the library is incredible. You should be getting a library. That's something fun to do, something your kids can do. Anyways, question number 4, something I'd like to organize or figure out. So that's a really fun one, and it gives kids control and power. So maybe it's organizing their bedroom, or maybe it's uh, organizing what their school year is going to look like, or it can be very, very simple. Maybe it's uh, figuring it out as simple as maybe they wanna start riding their bike to school, so they need help figuring out how they're gonna do that. It can be really, really simple, but you guys, all these questions are just prompts to your brain power. 5, someone this one was really important for our family. Someone I could help, and how often will I do it? It's very important. If we do not make a plan to make time for other people, we will not make time for other people, and other people will seem like an inconvenience. So especially before my kids had jobs, and this is still important, my husband and I still we just had a conversation about it this morning, that with as busy as we are, one of our goals is to make time for people, but we really struggle with that because 'cause we're goal-oriented people, and we like to be doing something, and sometimes people aren't the something because it's hard. But if that's a goal for you, then this is really important. So someone I could help, and how often. Usually it was a grandparent they picked or someone from church. A lot of times it is a grandparent. And sometimes it's as simple as I'm going to go to grandma's twice a week. And once I'm going to work on her yard. And the second time I'm just going to hang out with her. Or I'm going to pick two different grandmas. Or I'm going to see if someone at church needs some help. Or is there someone in my neighborhood? And that practice of learning to serve others will be such a valuable asset to your kids, and it gets them out of thinking about themselves. Again, is there a friend that needs some help? But getting this on their calendar and then helping them figure out how to follow through with that, again, they will make the plan themselves, I promise. Number 6, a way to stay healthy. So, what's a way to stay healthy? My kids are much healthier than me. Just in general, I think they grew up with these things, which I had to relearn them because it wasn't a focus in that. I was born 1980. People didn't talk about it. But what's something they can do that's good for them? So I think all of my kids chose running every day. Well, not Sydney. She's running now, but they wanted to run every day. And that was a goal for them. And then they put it on their calendar when they were going to run. Sadie, actually, the last 3 years has been a morning runner. So she's in 8th grade, so I think in 6th grade she started running, and at first I was afraid to let her go by herself, and then we just were like, "Okay, she's gotta be able to do this." And it's been so good for her because it started her morning. She went to run before it was too hot, and then she already got up, and then she allowed herself to sleep in as late as she wanted 2 days a week, and then I didn't complain when she slept till noon those days, sometimes 1, because she was still trying to set that expectation for herself. They also have, like, I wanna cook a healthy meal at least once a week, so putting that into the routine that they wanted to pick the meal, write down the ingredients. They could shop with me or not, it didn't matter, but they were gonna make that meal and learn something super duper duper awesome for them, you guys. So really, really easy. and teaches habits of health for your kids. And it doesn't have to be around weight. Let me emphasize, it should not be around their weight. It should be around how they feel about themselves. So staying healthy can be physical, emotional, spiritual, and it can be practices that just increase a daily dose of you're freaking awesome and you are doing really great things. So super good. And number 7, a way to stay connected to others. So that's a big thing, especially in this younger culture, is they don't I notice a ton of anxiety about hanging out. Like they might text each other or Snapchat, but there's no real deep or serious connection. So, especially in the summer, how can we connect with others? How can we invite friends over? Um, and it doesn't just have to be friends, it can be anyone. So, again, back to that grandparent, my parent, like I want to make sure that I play tennis with mom and dad at least once a week or 3 nights a week or going for a walk or making sure I visit my papa or whatever it is, having my friends over to the pool twice a week, even if I don't want to, because I always know that it's better once I do. So these are our summer uh, kick off the summer. You guys, I promise you, as moms, it will help you to not be frustrated with your kids. And then hang these in their room. They hang them in their room. And then maybe you make a family board that you put on your fridge that has everybody's things that make them happy, their goal, things that make them sad, and ways to make them smile. And that way everyone can see it, but they put their goals in front of them. And that's what you're nagging around. Hey, you said you were going to be going for a run 3 times a week. What day are you doing that? Would you like anyone to join you? And, oh, you said that you would really like to go to a water park, so I'm trying to plan that. Does July so and so sound great? Like, just setting some wheels in motion so that your kids are being proactive in the life that they wanna live, and you know how to come alongside them. You guys, probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself and my family, and it alleviated me being annoyed with them and thinking that I was a horrible mom because all they did was sit on their screen all day, ate junk food, and laid in bed. Your kids are smarter than you think. They want to do more than we give them credit for, and they're really freaking awesome. So, you're an awesome mom for being here. Thanks for listening, and I hope that you know that if you're not doing okay, that you are going to be okay. That if you are moving one step forward every day, you're headed in the right direction. And even if you go backwards sometimes, that's part of going forward. Life is a journey and you are on your way. We're just going from one place to the other. I'm glad that you're here. I guess this is where I ask you to subscribe to my channel, to follow me on social, and to listen wherever podcasts can be found. And join me every Tuesday at 2 as we unpack how to heal your hair, your heart, and your happiness.